So this is your lecture on the Roaring Twenties, the stuff you didn't know that you wanted to know. All right, so in 1919, World War One has ended, and the United States is transitioning from wartime building of factories in which they are everything is built for war and for producing goods for war, and of course that's very profitable. And also, it also meant that there were lots of jobs available. Those jobs obviously had to be filled, but they couldn't be filled by the typical people that would work there, the young men of America, because most of them had signed up and been off to war. So a lot of those jobs were filled with women and with minorities. Of course, when the war is over, a couple things happen. The men come back from war, and also those factories don't need quite to do as much as they had in the past. So because of that, they reduce the amount of hours that they have, the factories that are open in general, and of course this creates the less need for employees. So because of that, we end up with a lot of people in unemployment. Men are some men, but mostly women and minorities lost those jobs, and we're now looking for work. Warren Harding is elected president. He's the 29th president. He's a Republican from Ohio. And he believes in lower taxes and higher tariffs. And those are taxes on imported goods, remember. And he runs under the idea of return to normalcy. He was not the favorite to win the election. But because the Republicans couldn't really come up with a somebody that they could all agree on, it finally starts to momentum starts to build for Warren Harding, and he becomes a Republican nominee. The Republicans win this election, and a lot of that has to do with the idea of friendly to big business, not friendly to imported goods, and that's that high tariffs. And so, because of that, people were really looking at America and looking inward, and they thought the Republicans best represented that. Warren Harding himself and his presidency was not without scandal. However, most of the information about the scandals came out after he was that he had died. But one of the things that came out was about the Veterans Bureau. See, what had happened was Warren Harding, when he was elected president, he actually puts a lot of his friends into the cabinet positions and the positions as a president. When you're elected president, you get to put a lot of different people into the advisors that are around you, and this included people like the Attorney General. So there's two big things that happened. There's the Veterans Bureau and the Teapot Dome scandal. The Veterans Bureau was a case where after the soldiers were coming back, and they had all these things that were going to put in place after World War One for all these veterans who've been wounded in war, and they wanted to build veterans hospitals all throughout the country. One of the guys that Harding had put into office or put into place for to be in charge of this had actually made a deal with two construction companies that they would overcharge the government to build these hospitals, and they would split the profits three ways between the two construction companies and the guy who Harding had put in place. His last name was Forbes. The Teapot Dome scandal was another big one. There was an oil reserve in Wyoming that was supposed to be used for the Navy, and so nobody was supposed to be drilling around it. However, one of the guys that Harding put in place, the Attorney General, had made a deal that said, hey, you can go off and sold the rights to drill around the Teapot Dome area in Wyoming, and they basically were drilling the oil underneath the ground from Teapot Dome. And it came to find out that the drilling companies that had got the rights to do this were actually paying off the people that Harding had put into office. So in both cases, Harding didn't really know about what was happening, but he had put his friends in position, and this caused a lot of problems. Calvin Coolidge becomes the 30th president in 1923 when Warren Harding dies. Warren Harding has a heart attack and or has heart issues, and that causes his death. And Calvin Coolidge was your classic vice president. Didn't say much, didn't do much, was really just there. Of course, though, when Harding dies, he becomes the president. In 1924, he runs for president on his own and becomes president. So this is actually the first term of his presidency. So he could actually run for 2 terms. After serving out the rest of Harding's term, he can run for 2 more terms. And he does run for 1 in 1924. And he wins that with "Keep Cool with Coolidge" was his motto. And business grew under Silent Cal. He was a president that didn't say much, didn't do much, didn't get in the way of big business. And of course, big business has the money, and big business is who really wants a guy like Calvin Coolidge to be president. In 1928, Calvin Coolidge does not run again for a second term, and so a different guy, Herbert Hoover, is elected to be the 31st president of the United States. Again, he's a Republican, so we've had 3 Republicans in a row with Harding, Coolidge, and then Hoover. And when Hoover wins, he was actually served in the Harding administration. So he's been around politics and the presidency for a while. And again, he favors big business. And so this is an easy win for him over the Democrat Smith. Now, Smith lost for a couple of reasons. One, because he was Catholic. And a lot of people were speaking out against the Catholics at this time that didn't want them to be president. The Ku Klux Klan even said that they didn't want Smith to be president because they said that the Pope would be running the United States if a Catholic got involved. So that was one strike against Smith. The other was that he was a Democrat who did not favor big business. They looked at large government, lots of regulations on business. And at the time, the economy is doing well. It's growing. It's been growing all throughout the 1920s. The stock market's been growing throughout the 1920s, and people are making loads and loads of money. The last thing they wanted was somebody to get in the way of that. And so they elected another Republican, and that was Herbert Hoover. So, Republicans and big business. What's the difference? Well, Republicans' policy on business is less regulations. Let's get as out of the way as we can. Businesses can grow. When business grows, it hires more people. If more people are working, then they have more money. If more people have more money, they spend more money. And if they spend more money, then business can continue to grow. That was the thought. It had a great effect on the American people because they had jobs, they had money, and it was all working out really good. The problem is if you don't put any regulations on business and you let them do what they want, this is when you start to see a lot of things happening that are maybe, not above board. They're legal activities. They're things that may not be friendly to everybody. There are things that could be, we would look today and say, oh, look, they're skirting the rules. They're doing things that are not what we would say the right way to do stuff. And so, of course, this causes lots of issues for people in the back end of things, and also it creates issues with with the real financial aspect of things. Are things really as good as they seem to be in the 1920s? And we soon get the answer to that they are not. A lot of it is propped up by the illegal activities of the big businesses, things that they're doing to make themselves look better. Because the stock market is all about appearance. If your business looks like it's going to do well, people will invest in it, and that's what the businesses wanted. And so they lied about things. And of course, that meant that the stock market wasn't really doing as well as people thought it was. Or it was doing well, but it wasn't really based on sound information.